back at it again, and we have one here with Jesse Lee Peterson. You know, this guy will give it to you straight, no chaser. So it's always a pleasure to check out some Jesse Lee Peterson. But like, share, comment, and hit that subscribe button if you're new. And let's dive in.
Are most Black Americans suffering due to racism or the lack of moral character?
Well, it is a false equivalency. It is neither. It is.
So they're not suffering due to racism.
It is both.
And they're not suffering.
More than both.
But you're giving me too many answers.
That's all you can get, though. I mean, everything's not a soundbite. There are some things.
No, I want to know, are they suffering due to racism or the lack of moral character?
It is not either or.
So they're not suffering due to racism, and they're not suffering due to the lack of moral character.
It is both and some more. Does racism affect Black employment? Yes. Are there other things that affect Black employment? Certainly there are. Racism is one of them. Perhaps some character issues, depending on who the person is.
Let me go back to this. First, I want to say that racism doesn't exist. It's an illusion. What do you say about that?
I say that's silly.
You say that's silly?
Yes, sir.
Why do you say it's silly?
Well, I've been called names enough to know that racism exists.
But that could be because they just hated you. They made a judgment and they hate you, not because your color, they just hate you.
Oh. Interesante.
Do you ever have fights with family members?
No, I refuse.
But you know, family members do fight, right?
Sure.
And is that racist?
Not necessarily, no.
And so why is it that when Blacks...
I see where he's going with this. I see where he's going. You know, when there's fights with family members, you know, sometimes names are being thrown out there, all types of nasty stuff. Sometimes even fists are thrown. All right? I'm not going to say, you know, I've experienced that, but hey, you know, things happen. So he's saying those two situations are basically the same. Somebody else is calling you all types of names. So why isn't that the R word, but this other situation over here is? Interesting. Interesting.
White fight is racism.
You're oversimplifying reality.
Does the Bible say that we have a race issue or a spiritual issue?
I think the biggest problem with us when it comes to race relations is not skin, but sin. And so that issue of our problem starts on the inside. It's a person's heart. And
so the Bible says that we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities and wickedness in high places.
Yes.
Meaning that it has nothing to do with skin color. It has nothing to do with male and female. It's good versus evil. Am I right about that?
I believe you're right about that.
So then why should children of God go along with the children of the lie and call it racism when it's really not racism, something that doesn't exist, never has existed, and because it doesn't exist, we can't solve it. Why not call it what it is? So
you actually think racism has never existed?
Right.
Ooh.
Do you think you could trace your family history back to a thing called slavery, or is that my imagination?
I can. A matter of fact,
so you don't think slavery was racism?
No.
You weren't. Your parents.
Because there were Black people who owned slaves as well.
That's not my point. The point is,
Great
why
point.
were you a slave?
Because they just happened to own me. But let me tell you
But
this.
it had nothing to do with your race.
Well,
is
no.
there a reason why the...
In actuality, you know, the origins of slavery had nothing to do with skin color. It had everything to do with strength. That's just a fact. Stronger tribes took over weaker ones. And, you know, the assumption is that, or actually we watched a video on it, I believe. I want to say it was a Thomas Sowell video a while back. The stronger tribes took over the weaker ones, and the weaker ones got shipped off. So that had nothing to do with racism. That just had everything to do with that strength. You know what I mean? That muscle.
preponderance of slaves. The point is, why were you a slave?
Because they just happened to own me. But let me tell you
But it
this.
had nothing to do with your race.
Well,
Is
no.
there a reason why the preponderance of slaves in America, they were just accidentally Black?
But you know, white people have been enslaved as well by other whites,
course.
right? And then blacks have been enslaved by other blacks. In parts of Africa,
That's right.
they're still. Is that racism?
Probably not, no.
Yes or no?
I said probably not.
I know, but I need a yes or no. You're a pastor, so I
Oh,
want
and
to
he's a
try
pastor?
to help people.
Yeah, I understand that.
Is
But
that racism when blacks
enslave
other
blacks?
Yeah.
It can be racism, sir.
When
That's the
blacks
issue.
enslave other blacks?
It can be, yes.
How is that?
I'm Black, you're Black, I take you to the white slaveholder. because you're black. That's racism on my part and his.
But we're not talking about white on black race.
It has nothing to do with because you're black. It's because you're weak. And I know that I can control you. If a black person enslaves another black person, it's not because the other black person is black, because the person enslaving the black person is black. So how does that even make sense? You can't hate yourself. Well, I mean, I guess technically you can, but you wouldn't be even like going that route. You would be too filled with self-hate, right? I don't know. I'm confused. I'm really lost with that last statement.
Because you're black. That's racism on my part and his.
But we're not talking about white on black slavery. In Africa, black on black.
Yeah.
Slavery. No white people around.
Yeah.
I believe that's still happening in what was it, Libya? Let me know if I'm correct on that one. I believe that's where it was. It was like a video that I came across a long time ago, or one of you guys sent it to me. I should have made a video on it, but I don't know if YouTube would have allowed me to put that up. You know what I mean? This is one of those. But yeah.
Is that racism?
It can be.
But is it?
You'll have to check his heart. I don't know. The reality is the preponderance, the most of white on black slavery was racism.
How do you know
if
that?
If you read the writings.
How would he know that if he didn't check their heart? Y'all remember? He said, I don't know. You got to check their heart. So don't you have to check a white person's heart? Maybe the white people just wanted cheap labor. You know, I'm just saying. Let's play devil's advocate here. Maybe they just wanted cheap labor.
If you read the diaries, if you check the historical statements made by the folks who held the slaves, the disrespect, the disregard, making them
black people did other
making
blacks
them
worse than
making
that.
them not a person, then 3/5 of a person. That is racism. It was institutionalized, codified right there in the Constitution.
That was for the power of the
Of
vote.
course it was, but it's still racism,
No, it's
regardless
not.
of what your motive is.
Let me
it's
move
racism.
on.
All right.
Morality. I say that most black Americans are suffering not because of racism, but the lack of moral character. Most blacks are immoral. Do you disagree with that?
I think that's a stupid statement, sir, with all due respect.
And do you disagree?
I definitely disagree, yes.
And why do you disagree?
Well, to say that most blacks are immoral, I disagree because it compares, it by virtue of the context in which you say it, it is in comparison to whites. I think that's what you're saying.
I wasn't thinking that way, but okay.
Well, I mean, you have to have some context
But
to
you
it.
disagree with me, right?
Oh, yes.
72% of black babies are born out of wedlock today.
And what's
Is
the percentage of white babies
Is
born
that
out of
immoral?
What percentage of white babies are born out of wedlock?
Answer my question first.
I happen to know. if
But
you're
is that
interested.
immoral?
It's definitely immoral.
So these blacks who are having these babies are carrying out, performing an immoral act, right?
Uh-huh.
Am I right?
Yes.
Black on black crime out of control in most of the cities. Is that immoral?
I couldn't call that necessarily immoral.
It's not immoral? Why
It
not?
depends on what crime, who's participating in it, how many people. You know, you went from the one about the babies and you left a question unanswered.
What was that?
The majority of white babies are also
Well,
born
why
out
are
of
you
wedlock
bringing
now.
up whites when we're talking about blacks?
Well, because why are you picking on blacks?
I'm not.
Why,
I'm not
why,
picking
why,
on blacks.
I mean, it's
I brought
an
you here because
American
I'm trying
problem.
to help blacks.
See, why are we talking about racism then? Because it's an American problem, not a black
It's not
problem.
an American problem.
It is an American problem.
How is
The
that?
majority of babies in America now are born out of wedlock.
But see, we're talking about the issues of black Americans today, and how are you going to help them if you justify their bad behavior?
Oh, nobody's justifying.
By pointing out what white people are doing, because blacks are already blaming everybody else for their problems instead of themselves, so they're not getting better.
Ooh, he brought up a great point right there. Everybody's pointing the finger at everybody else instead of pointing it at themselves. And I've stated that many times in videos. Y'all know. Many times. We just checked out the ASU students not too long ago, last week, who just wanted to point the finger at everybody else. Oh, it's the white guy wearing the Bass Pro hat with the Chick-fil-A cup. It's his fault that people like me don't feel comfortable. What? Maybe it's your fault.
And that's why I brought you here, to make them focus on themselves and stop talking about what the white man is doing.
Okay. Black people who are focusing on yourself, stop.
But no, you are pointing out, when I ask you about immorality and all this stuff, you pointed out what the white man did.
No,
I
no,
don't know
I
why.
only did it because you are, by definition, comparing black people to whites.
I'm not.
Well, by definition.
No, I'm not comparing them at all. I'm talking
saying
about the way that God wants us to live as a people if we want to survive on earth.
So, I love how Jesse Lee Peterson just stays calm the entire time he's engaging with someone, because, I think it creates and opens up the dialogue a bit more when the interviewer or the person asking the what's supposed to be inflammatory questions just remains calm. Their demeanor doesn't change. So Jesse Lee Peterson has mastered the art of engaging with folks, or keeping an interview engaging, right, without having someone storm off. Y'all let me know in the comment section below what y'all thought about this Jesse Lee Peterson interview. And I love how he called out the guy when he pointed the finger at the white people once again. Because he was like, I'm trying to get away from that mentality. We're not pointing the finger at anybody else except for ourselves. That's it. Stop. No. I don't want to hear about what the white person is doing. Because the pastor was like, well, you didn't mention the white people in, their, what was out of wedlock pregnancies or whatever. I don't care about what they're doing. I'm talking about black people. Stop making an excuse. And I love that. I love that. Stop making an excuse. Oh, well, so-and-so is doing it. Like the old saying, well, if so-and-so jumps off a bridge, are you going to too? Love Jesse Lee Peterson for that. But like I said, y'all let me know what you thought about this one in the comment section below. Like, share, comment, and of course, hit that subscribe button before you go. Peace and love. I'm out.